was supposed to be my rock, but he was secretly celebrating my death. I was bald, sick, clinging to life. Meanwhile, my husband, my so-called soulmate, was busy sneaking around with a woman half my age. While I was fighting for my next breath, he was taking her on vacations, using the money meant for my treatment. But guess what? I didn't just survive. I turned my recovery into the most brutal revenge story he'll never escape from. And by the end, he would lose everything: his job, his reputation, and his freedom. Here's how I made it happen. Before you judge, ask yourself this: what would you do if the person you trusted most stabbed you in the back while you were at your weakest? Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival, revenge, and reclaiming power when everyone counted you out. Let's begin. My name is Hannah Walker. I'm 35 years old, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. If you met me a year ago, you'd probably call me lucky. I had what most people would envy: a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood, a stable career in finance, and a husband who, to the outside world, seemed like the textbook definition of supportive. His name was Derek, 38, tall, charming, and everyone's favorite at social gatherings. He worked in IT consulting, pulled 6 figures, and had a smile that could melt a room. People used to tell me, "You really got yourself a good one." And back then, I believed it. We were married for 9 years, 9 years of building a life together, planning vacations, buying our first house, Sunday morning brunches, date nights once a week. At least that's what it looked like on paper. Behind closed doors, life wasn't always perfect. But whose is, right? We had our fights, disagreements about work, kids, which we never ended up having, by the way. And sometimes it felt like we were just going through the motions. But through it all, I held on to one belief: Derek loved me, flaws and all, in sickness and in health. That's what we promised each other, until life decided to test that promise in the cruelest way possible. 16 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. I remember the day vividly, sitting in a cold, sterile doctor's office while my world tilted on its axis. I was 34, healthy, working out 3 times a week, eating clean. Cancer wasn't even on my radar. Derek was there with me that day. He held my hand, kissed my forehead, whispered, "We'll fight this together." And in that moment, I felt safe. I felt like no matter how hard the road got, at least I had him by my side. We adjusted our lives overnight. I took a leave of absence from work. Derek became my rock, or so I thought. He was by my side during the first few rounds of chemo. He drove me to appointments, made me smoothies, told me I was beautiful even when I lost my hair. For a while, I convinced myself that our marriage was stronger than ever, that battling cancer together would be our redemption arc, that after this storm, we'd come out better, closer, unbreakable. I would stare at myself in the mirror, pale skin, sunken cheeks, patchy scalp, and I would whisper, "At least you're loved. At least Derek is here." I needed that belief like I needed air. It kept me breathing, kept me fighting. What I didn't realize was that while I was clinging to Derek for survival, he was already planning his escape. After my diagnosis, life slowed down in ways I never imagined. Days bled into nights, appointments piled up, and my world shrank into the walls of our home. I went from a busy, high-functioning career woman to a patient who counted her wins in good blood counts and less nausea. But there were moments, tiny moments, that were supposed to feel like comfort. Mornings when Derek would make me oatmeal and sit beside me, pretending to be interested in whatever random show I binged. Afternoons when he'd set up a sun lounger in the backyard so I could feel the warmth of the sun on my fragile skin. Nights where he'd rub my back when the aches became unbearable. We developed a routine, our cancer life, as I called it. At first I was grateful for the stability, for the quiet rhythm, for the kindness. But over time, something began to change. The little things, they felt less genuine. He stopped sitting through entire episodes with me. His work calls started to stretch longer into the evening. He would disappear during chemo sessions, saying he had to step out to take care of errands. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was too clingy. Maybe Derek just needed an outlet, a mental break from the heavy burden of being a caregiver. Everyone told me, cancer is hard on marriages, cut him some slack. So I did. I swallowed my doubts, put on a brave face, and told myself he was coping in his own way. But my gut wouldn't stay quiet. There were moments that didn't add up. Days when he'd come home smelling like cologne I didn't recognize. Times when his phone would light up, and he'd flip it over so I wouldn't see the name. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a text when he carelessly left his phone on the kitchen counter. A simple line, "Miss you already. Last night was, wow." My heart stalled. My first instinct? Maybe it was a friend joking around. Maybe I misread it. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered what I wasn't ready to accept. Something was very wrong. I brushed it off, or at least I tried. I told myself I was paranoid, my brain fried from medications and anxiety, but that voice wouldn't go away. I started noticing more. The late nights, the quick showers when he got home, the increasing distance in his eyes. Then came the day that cracked everything open. Derek left for work, unusually dressed up, fresh haircut, expensive watch, and that same cologne I hadn't bought for him. My instincts screamed, but I was too weak to follow him. Instead, I waited and waited until curiosity ate me alive. I picked up his iPad, our shared device, and with a few simple clicks, I opened his synced messages. And just like that, the facade shattered. I stared at the screen, heart thumping so loud it drowned out every rational thought. There it was, an endless stream of texts, photos, voice notes. Not just one woman, but two. I scrolled with shaking fingers, each message driving a fresh dagger into my chest. Words like, "Can't wait to feel you again," and "She has no clue. It's thrilling." Photos of dinners, hotel rooms, selfies with cocktails, all dated during my worst chemotherapy cycles. I felt like I was watching my own funeral, except I was alive, forced to witness the man I trusted most betray me in real time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was Derek lying to my face, holding my hand while texting other women under the dinner table. By morning, I had dark circles under my already frail eyes, but I also had a newfound clarity. I needed to know the full truth. The first step was simple: start observing. I noticed patterns I had overlooked for months. His phone was always on silent, always face down. He'd leave it in his car during our movie nights, claiming work stress. But every time he returned from these quick car runs, he looked lighter, happier. His mood swings were sudden. One moment he'd be attentive, doting even, and the next he was distant, irritable. He snapped over the smallest things, a burnt toast, a misplaced remote. Then there were his absences, more client dinners, more weekend networking events, more business trips to cities that didn't align with his consulting region. I pretended to believe every word. I smiled, nodded, thanked him for working so hard. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything: screenshots, phone records, credit card statements, GPS history from our shared devices. Each day unearthed more betrayals, more receipts. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Multiple affairs, multiple dates, even weekend getaways, all while I was battling for my life. But I stayed quiet. Why? Because I was playing the long game. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream or throw things like I had seen in movies. No, I was going to collect every lie, every stolen dollar, every betrayal. And when the time came, I would burn his entire world to the ground, slowly, methodically, and without an ounce of mercy. In the weeks that followed, I became a ghost in my own home, silent, invisible, but sharper than I'd ever been. Derek thought I was too weak to notice, too exhausted to care. He smiled, kissed my forehead, whispered fake reassurances, and went about his double life like the perfect actor. But I was done playing the clueless wife. I started small. Every time Derek left for business, I checked his GPS history on our car's app. Not once did he visit the addresses he claimed. More often, his car was parked in unfamiliar suburbs, hotels, even private residences. Then, I went through our shared credit card statements, something I rarely did before. I found spa charges, luxury dinners, hotel suites, even lingerie purchases, none of which were for me. I opened a private email account, forwarding every suspicious receipt and document there. I didn't want him finding out. I needed time to see just how deep this rabbit hole went. One evening, while he was out, I checked his laptop. He had gotten lazy, too confident, bookmarked pages to dating sites, open chats with usernames I didn't recognize, explicit messages spanning months. The more I found, the more detached I became from the marriage I once fought for. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was focused, calculating, cold, determined. But I wasn't reckless. I knew enough stories of women confronting their cheating husbands too soon, only to be gaslit, manipulated, or brushed aside. That wasn't going to be me. I needed undeniable proof, and more importantly, I needed leverage. So I reached out to a friend, Cassandra, a former colleague turned private investigator. She was discreet, efficient, and more importantly, loyal. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to get her interested. Within days, Cassandra tracked Derek's movements, obtained video footage of his dinner dates, and even managed to capture him kissing one of his mistresses in broad daylight. It was all becoming painfully clear. Derek wasn't just stepping out of the marriage, he was sprinting. And the worst part? He was funding his entire double life with money allocated for my treatment. Insurance payouts, savings from my years of hard work, all burned on his selfish desires. With each passing day, my anger evolved. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to expose him, dismantle his reputation, ruin his financial security, and make sure everyone who ever said Derek is such a great husband saw the truth in the most brutal way possible. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And I was only getting started. The day I confronted Derek, I made sure everything was perfect. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wanted control, precision, power. And I made sure he had no idea it was coming. That morning, I dressed in one of the few outfits that still fit me, a soft blue sweater, comfortable jeans, and a headscarf that framed my pale face. I looked fragile, exactly how Derek wanted to see me. But inside, I was a storm waiting to explode. I prepared the living room, laptop open, photos printed out, credit card statements laid out on the coffee table. Cassandra had delivered everything neatly organized in a folder labeled Truth. When Derek walked through the door that evening, he looked surprised to see me downstairs. His fake smile appeared like clockwork. "Hey, babe. You're up early. How was your day?" I took a deep breath, forcing calmness into every word. "Great," I replied. "Actually, it's been enlightening." I gestured to the laptop. "Sit." Derek's grin faltered. His eyes darted to the folder, to the open browser tab displaying GPS tracking data. "What? What's all this?" he asked, voice suddenly tight. I clicked play. A video popped up, clear footage of him kissing another woman outside a hotel. Then another clip, him laughing, holding hands with someone else. "Recognize them?" I asked quietly. His jaw clenched. "Hannah, it's not what it looks like." The oldest lie in the book. I stood up, my legs still weak, but my voice stronger than ever. "Derek, while I was losing my hair, puking my guts out and wondering if I'd even survive another month, you were out whining and dining strangers with my treatment money." His face flushed, switching between anger and panic. Listen, I was stressed, okay? You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I slid the folder toward him, every receipt, every photo, every disgusting betrayal captured in black and white. And guess what? I continued, my tone sharper. I'm not here to beg or to fight for this marriage. I'm here to let you know it's over. Derek staggered back like I had physically slapped him. You can't just leave. We have things. I smiled, cold, victorious. Oh, I'm not just leaving. I'm taking everything. The house, mine. The savings, reclaimed. Your precious reputation at work, already sent to HR, with evidence. For the first time in our marriage, Derek was speechless. I picked up my folder, walked upstairs, and left him standing there, drowning in his own guilt and fear. This was only the beginning of his downfall. The fallout was immediate, brutal, messy, and utterly satisfying. Derek was blindsided. I had spent months preparing this moment, and within 48 hours of that confrontation, the life he so carelessly built on lies came crashing down. The first strike hit at his job. Cassandra had already prepared a digital package, video evidence, timestamps of his business trips, and flagged transactions using joint accounts for illicit purposes. I didn't have to lift a finger. By the time Derek walked into work the next morning, HR was waiting for him, along with company legal counsel. I received the update before lunchtime, terminated for ethical misconduct and financial fraud regarding the company's travel expenses. His career, years of building a pristine corporate image, was obliterated in one morning. But I wasn't done. That evening, I met with my lawyer, a tough-as-nails woman named Sandra, who had personally handled high-profile divorce cases. She reviewed the evidence I'd collected and smiled, telling me we had more than enough to file for an at-fault divorce, reclaim spousal assets, and freeze joint accounts before Derek could even attempt to hide anything. We moved fast. Within 3 days, Derek was served with divorce papers, a temporary restraining order on accessing any shared funds, and an immediate court date to begin asset separation proceedings. His confusion turned to fury. I expected rage. I expected accusations. But what I didn't expect was how quickly Derek unraveled. The once cocky man who strutted around our house acting like a savior, now pacing in desperation, calling me dozens of times, leaving pathetic voicemails begging for just one more chance. I ignored every single call. The next wave hit socially. Derek had cultivated a public image, friendly, generous, the doting husband supporting his cancer-stricken wife. I shattered that illusion within hours. Through a carefully worded post, I explained my departure from our marriage, not with drama, but with irrefutable facts. No insults, no victimhood, just the truth. The community that once praised him turned their backs overnight. Friends unfriended him, family members expressed their disgust, and his social circle disintegrated piece by piece. One of the most poetic moments was hearing from his own mother, who called to apologize to me, saying, "I raised him better than this." Derek tried fighting back. His lawyer attempted to play the sympathy card, pushing for mediation and asset protection. But the documentation I had compiled was watertight. There was no escaping accountability. Not only did I get full ownership of the house, but I reclaimed every dollar that had been funneled into his affairs, plus punitive damages for emotional and financial abuse. By the end of the legal process, Derek wasn't just broke. He was humiliated, jobless, and essentially homeless. I could have stopped there. I had already won, hadn't I? But there was still a final choice to make: disappear and rebuild quietly, or stand tall and use my story to empower others. And I knew the answer. I chose visibility. I started volunteering at a local cancer support group, speaking openly about betrayal and survival. Women reached out, thanking me for sharing what many suffered in silence. Then came the blog. and eventually, a platform where I spoke about reclaiming power after devastating betrayal. It became more than revenge. It became purpose. Each time Derek's name was mentioned, whether through gossip or the occasional attempt he made to discredit me, it only fueled the reality that I had won far more than material assets. I had reclaimed my life, my identity, my dignity. I was no longer Hannah, the cancer patient, or Hannah, the betrayed wife. I was Hannah Walker, survivor, warrior, and the woman who destroyed a cheater while healing herself. Just when I thought the nightmare was over, life decided to throw in one last revelation, one I never anticipated. It happened about 6 weeks after the dust had settled. I was rebuilding my routine. Doctor's appointments were less frequent, my energy levels were improving, and the crushing weight of Derek's betrayal was slowly lifting off my shoulders. One afternoon, while sorting through some of Derek's old files before having them shredded, I stumbled upon a slim yellow folder I hadn't seen before. At first glance, it looked unremarkable. Miscellaneous paperwork, receipts, and some random bills. But tucked inside was a single folded letter, addressed to Derek from a name I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the best of me. I unfolded it, and what I read nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. It was a letter from an attorney, dated nearly 2 years before my diagnosis, confirming Derek's application for a secret investment account in the Cayman Islands. Attached was a brief statement showing multiple deposits, totaling over $200,000. For a minute, I couldn't process it. This wasn't just about cheating. Derek had been hiding assets long before my illness, before any marriage troubles became obvious. I dug deeper, pulling old emails, matching dates, checking our financial statements from previous years, and the pieces fell together in a way that made my stomach twist. Derek's betrayal didn't start when I got sick. It started long before, quiet, calculated, like a parasite slowly feeding off our marriage. The lavish gifts he bought for me over the years, often purchased after skimming off joint accounts. The mysterious work trips that started popping up before my cancer diagnosis, they coincided with spikes in withdrawals from our savings. I realized something brutal. My cancer didn't cause the end of my marriage. It simply revealed it. The man who vowed to protect me, who promised forever, had been planning his escape all along. Even when I thought we were happy, he was laying the groundwork to leave, cheating emotionally, financially, and eventually physically. It shook me more than I wanted to admit. I had spent months telling myself Derek's betrayal was the product of stress, of weakness in the face of life's hardships. But this was premeditated. It wasn't a man crumbling under pressure. It was a man who had never truly loved me the way I had convinced myself he did. I had 2 choices: close the folder, let it go, and focus on healing. Or pursue justice on a scale far beyond divorce court. You can guess which one I chose. With Sandra's help, I reopened the legal proceedings. We filed charges for financial fraud, undisclosed assets during marriage, and intentional concealment of joint funds. Within weeks, the authorities froze Derek's offshore account. He wasn't just facing public humiliation anymore. He was now under federal investigation. Every fancy vacation, every extravagant dinner, every designer gift he bought for his mistresses, tracked, documented, and turned into legal evidence. The final blow came when Derek had to appear in court, not as a divorcing husband, but as a defendant in a criminal trial. I attended every hearing, sitting calmly in the gallery, not out of vengeance, but out of principle. For the first time, Derek couldn't charm his way out. He couldn't lie, couldn't manipulate the narrative, couldn't hide behind fake apologies. Justice wasn't just symbolic, it became tangible. By the end of it, the court ruled in my favor once again. The Cayman account, liquidated and returned. Fines imposed for asset concealment. A pending fraud charge that destroyed any chance of him landing a respectable job ever again. That yellow folder, the thing I almost threw away, became the final nail in Derek's coffin. And I walked away with my dignity restored, my finances secured, and the full truth in my hands. Sometimes, survival isn't enough. Sometimes, you need to expose every layer of betrayal, so that the liar is stripped bare for the world to see. By the time Derek's trial ended, I realized something profound. Revenge may have been the fuel that kept me moving, but it wasn't my final destination. Standing in that courtroom, watching the man who once vowed to protect me crumble into nothing more than a cautionary tale, I felt closure. But more than that, I felt a new beginning stir within me. I wasn't just a woman who survived betrayal. I wasn't just a cancer patient who beat the odds. I was something far greater, a woman reborn from the ashes of devastation. The first thing I did after the verdict was simple. I booked a solo trip, not to run away, but to rediscover myself. I went to the Pacific Northwest, somewhere I'd always wanted to visit, but had put off because Derek hated the rain. It rained every day I was there, and I loved every second of it. I hiked through mossy forests, stood in silence by roaring waterfalls, and breathed in crisp air that seemed to cleanse every piece of me. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking someone else's schedule. I wasn't worrying about anyone else's approval. It was just me, learning what I liked, who I was, and what I wanted moving forward. When I returned home, the house felt different. It wasn't filled with tension anymore. It wasn't a space of lies or manipulation. It was mine. Every corner, every wall, every quiet evening was mine to enjoy or redesign. I redecorated. I changed the bedroom first. New paint, new furniture, new sheets that didn't hold the memories of Derek's presence. I donated old photos, sold wedding gifts, cleared out closets, and made space for something better, myself. But I didn't stop there. I went back to work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My time away gave me clarity on what I loved about my career and what I wanted to change. I joined a new firm, one that valued my experience and flexibility, allowing me to work part-time while still focusing on my health. With the settlement from Derek's frozen assets and court-awarded damages, I wasn't working out of necessity. I was working on my terms. Slowly, my days filled with purpose again. Not the forced routines of survival, but the intentional routines of growth. Morning walks turned into jogs. Support groups turned into speaking engagements. Casual journaling became published blog posts that resonated with thousands of women who felt trapped in silence. Everywhere I turned, I found pieces of myself I thought were lost forever. Confidence, joy, ambition, freedom. And piece by piece, I rebuilt. There were tough moments, of course. Nights when the old wounds ached, when the ghost of my past whispered in my ear. But I learned to sit with it, to acknowledge the pain, but never let it define me again. Friends noticed the shift first. "You look lighter," they'd say. "You smile with your whole face now." And it was true. I no longer walked with the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I walked taller, freer, bolder. As months turned into a year, my life looked nothing like it used to, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Derek was nothing more than a closed chapter in a book I no longer reread. My scars, both physical and emotional, were no longer signs of defeat, but symbols of survival. And the biggest change? I no longer feared being alone. In fact, I reveled in it. Being alone meant being whole on my own terms. It meant I didn't have to shrink myself for anyone, didn't have to explain my happiness, didn't have to settle for half-truths and empty promises. I was Hannah Walker, fighter, survivor, rebuilder, and most importantly, someone who chose herself. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all. Looking back now, I realize life doesn't break you just to leave you shattered. It breaks you to rebuild you stronger, clearer, and more honest than ever before. There was a time I thought my marriage was everything: my identity, my stability, my future. I thought loyalty guaranteed happiness, that sacrifices earned love, and that standing by someone through sickness would make them cherish you more. I learned in the harshest way possible that love doesn't work like that. People don't betray you because you're not enough. They betray you because their character is lacking. My sickness didn't break my marriage. It simply revealed it was already broken. I used to think survival was the finish line, that getting through cancer, getting through betrayal, was the ultimate goal. But it wasn't. Survival was just the starting point. Thriving, rediscovering myself, taking back my freedom, that's where true victory lived. Revenge was never really about destroying Derek. It was about reclaiming power in a world that tried to take it from me. It was about standing tall in the ruins and realizing I still had the strength to build something new, something better. I tell my story not to bask in bitterness, but to remind anyone listening: you are never trapped. You are never too broken, too late, or too far gone to start over. Even when life knocks you down with betrayal, illness, or heartbreak, you have two choices: stay buried under the rubble, or rise from it fiercer than ever. I chose to rise, and every day since, I've chosen myself. I hope you do too, because no matter who tried to break you, your comeback will always be louder than their betrayal.